All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you and welcome to this Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Raymore Planning and Zoning Commission. If you would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll go through roll call. Commissioner Bowie?
Present.
Commissioner Smith?
Present.
Commissioner Faulkner?
Present.
Vice Chair Fizer?
Present.
Commissioner Manser?
Present.
Secretary Peterman?
Present.
Commissioner Kia?
Present.
Mayor Turnbow?
Present.
And Chairman Wiggins is here. We are fully loaded. All right. We have no personal appearances scheduled this evening. We do have, so that takes us to item 5, our consent agenda, approval of minutes for the March 21st, 2023 meeting, which I know, Mr. Faulkner, you had
Mr. Chair,
point of clarification, please. Yes, sir.
I move that we accept minutes of our March 21st, 2023 meeting with one correction under case 23007, third paragraph. Mayor Turnbow, I don't believe that you said having a cul-de-sac style dead end would encourage crime to move through both developments. I think it should be discouraged.
That's correct, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the motion.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion from Commissioner Faulkner, second from Commissioner Kia to approve minutes with the correction of discourage as opposed to encourage regarding crime and cul-de-sacs. Any discussion of the topic, please? Seeing none, all in favor? Seeing all raised, that passes unanimously, 9-0. Thank you. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll go immediately into new business. We have 2 items. The first is case 23012, 103 South Jefferson Street, rezoning from C2/OT to R1/OT. This does require a public hearing. I know there is a slight adjustment to this as I believe the property has since sold, but because this was notified in the paper and a good neighbor meeting was held, by rule we do need to go ahead and have a public hearing. So I will open that at 6:04 p.m. and would encourage if anybody from the public has anything to say regarding this, to please come forward, as you are definitely welcome to. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and since we do not have any staff report, I assume what would be the appropriate tweet? We just move on. So check that box and move on to item B, case number 23013, Sunset Villas site plan. And with that, I would ask the applicant to please come forward to present your case.
Good evening, Matt Slish, Engineering Solutions, 50 Southeast 30th Street, Lee Summit, Missouri. With me this evening is Charlie Burnett as well, who can answer any questions. He's the actual developer. So Charlie owns a piece of Greenway Villas that's down at Lucy Webb and Dean, similar style products, similar style housing. And he found this piece of property that's just on the north side of town, just south of Johnston Lake, in between Sunset and Johnson Parkway. Already zoned appropriately for it. Previously there was a plan approved that had a little bit different type of use. So we went back and we've been working with city staff to kind of come up with a plan that will create 98 individual single family units. So there are basically 4 types of buildings in there. There are 4 buildings or 4 units attached in one building. There's a 5 unit and then there's a 6 unit. The 4th is we have a clubhouse that we've stuck on the end of one of them. It's a mixture of 1 and 2 bedroom units. So there's kind of just scattered through there. We've identified the building types that are associated through the site, which we can walk through on the site plan to kind of show there. There's surface parking for all of the units that are on site, as well as there's carports that'll be located kind of centrally through the site to provide opportunities for different types of parking. So this table is just kind of a mixture of all of the information. Short answer is essentially there's 98 units on site. The site is currently got about 60% or 55% hardscape, 45% that's green space, and essentially we have parking spaces that provides 3 parking spaces per unit. You give me that next slide. So this is our site plan. So on the left side is Johnson Parkway, on the east side is Sunset. So as you see, we kind of create little pockets or pods, kind of individually, so they're cul-de-sacs almost for each of the individual units to kind of have. The development of the housing units are to try to encourage the residents to kind of interact, have an opportunity to feel safe in that area where they're not walking across any thoroughfares where there's any gigantic amount of traffic. Everything's kind of internal to itself. Internally, there will be a number of things that will continue to develop that will be the green space amenities, whether it be some gardens, gazebos, picnic areas, some kind of opportunities to walk or, kind of get around through the site. You can see on there, basically, we've identified that there are 3 phases we think that we would probably build in. Potentially gets all built in one, but the idea would be we'd start on the Johnston side, on the west side, and then start working our way kind of individually through our cul-de-sacs or through our little pocket areas. The idea being is that there's only so many activities of construction that can happen at one time. So thinking that if we build 3 or 4 buildings at one time, that we can move on kind of to the next pod and allow for leasing to begin. The bottom left starts to show the carports that'll be identified kind of in the middle. So where phase 1, phase 2 are kind of written right there in that middle kind of corridor. Those are the carport areas. Essentially just an area to get an opportunity for someone to park a car, not on surface parking, still on surface, but has a little bit of cover to it and not necessarily a garage type area. Give me the next one. So this would be kind of a typical building. We'll go through on the next slide and kind of go through all the materials. But as you start to see kind of the individual gables, which are kind of the individual units on each one of them. This one in specific is the one with the clubhouse attached. So on the westerly end of a building on the north side, we've got kind of a large clubhouse area that will have a little garage to be able to store the mowing, store some of the snow removal equipment, just kind of the general odds and ends for maintenance of the facility. And it'll also have an opportunity for a gathering space inside, a leasing office, to be able to have an opportunity to meet the needs of the residents. And then as you go, and you can kind of see on the bottom side of it, the kind of typical front area where you'll have kind of a front little porch area. There's also an additional kind of back area that is covered on all of the units. It provides an opportunity to meet and gather in the front or the rear of the facility on every one of the units. One more. And then this is kind of a typical elevations, 3 different kind of colors, 3 different kind of material sample palettes of what we're thinking. So a mixture of lap siding, a mixture of some shake, a mixture of some stone kind of scattered through, a mixture of colors through there so we don't get the mundane look. And again, trying to pick a color type that's not wildly vibrant, but something a little bit more than just the neutral beige as you might have on some of their sites. I think the next one is it, down, is it right? And then we're here for questions, and Charlie is as well if you have any for him.
Thank you, sir. Any members have any questions before we go into our staff report? All right, if not, staff, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm actually going to try and not say anything, as Mr. Slitt was able to present pretty well. And so forgive me if I say something that he has already said, but I will do my best to put it all together for you. So tonight you have in front of you a site plan approval for Sunset Villas. Property is located directly north of Springing Up Childhood Development Center and east of Johnston Parkway. Current zoning for this is R3B Apartment Community Residential District, and the surrounding uses around: to the north, undeveloped property; to the south is a daycare facility and undeveloped; to the east is professional office, the new Compass Health that was just done a couple years ago; and to the west would be Remington subdivision. Total tract size is 9.35 acres and with a number of 98 dwelling units. This property has already been platted, and I'll go a little bit deeper into the history in here in a minute, but part of the Raymore Senior Village First plat, Lot 1. The future land use plan identifies this property as appropriate for medium density, and the major thoroughfare plan classifies Johnson Parkway as a minor collector and North Sunset Lane as a minor collector. A little bit of the history on the property: it was rezoned in 1996 from agriculture to R2, and then when we changed over our zoning districts, it went from R2, it went over to the R2 single and 2 family residential district. The Planning and Zoning Commission on August 7th of 2012 met and voted to recommend approval to reclassify the zoning of the subject property from R2 to the current zoning of the R3B Apartment Community District. And this rezoning would allow for the construction of apartments on the subject property. There was a lot of back and forth with City Council, but ultimately was approved in September of 2012. An application was then filed for a final plat, which was approved October of 2012, and then there was a site plan just after that, and Planning Commission had met before that, but wanted to, I think there was a couple of questions that they had initially, and so they postponed it and eventually approved the plan October 16th. A couple of the comments that I wanted to brush over. There is special use conditions associated with the property as it is an apartment community project. One of the big things we look for is that separation between the buildings, and that is compliant with our code. As far as the parking, we looked at this as a 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit. As the applicant had already stated, they've essentially doubled that. They've also proposed, and I've put in your packet as well, just kind of the renderings for their carports as well as the trash enclosures, but there will be 40 additional of those carports spaces. And then the landscaping requires 30%, or the applicants provided 43%, and with Johnston Parkway, that's considered a greenway, and so they are required to do additional trees, and they're meeting that standard as well. Pedestrian access is going to be primarily from Johnston Parkway, and then internally throughout the site. With the GEO bond project for Sunset Lane, we're still kind of in discussions with that, and so the developer is not going to be required to do the sidewalk on that area, as we'll be doing a walking trail with the construction of Sunset Lane. The fire district also had there was a site plan that was submitted over that just showed the fire protection plan, and that was to ensure that all the buildings could have adequate fire protection. And then site access, again, going to be primarily off Johnston Parkway, as the applicant is going to be working their way from west to east, as hopefully we'll have Sunset Lane done well before they get to their third phase. One of the things that we wanted to point out is obviously this is not a vertical apartment as you would typically see. However, with their proposal, with it being common ownership and under one tract of land, we felt that it was best under this R3B zoning than to keep it that way, as opposed to rezoning the property. The proposed site plan provides a use that was previously approved by the City Council back in 2012 when the property was rezoned from R2 to R3B. When the Raymore Senior Village was approved, and still in place is the development agreement from that 2012. We'll have to change a little bit of the wording just because it had a different applicant, but otherwise will remain substantially the same. Staff does recommend to the Planning Commission that they accept the staff proposed findings of fact and approve case number 23013 Sunset Villas site plan subject to the following 11 conditions. This would conclude staff report.
Thank you, sir. Do any members of the commission have any questions for city staff, or based on that, any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Faulkner. 14.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
I have one question to start, and we can start, I guess, with city staff. I believe it's page 14 of our staff report, talks about stormwater, excuse me, stormwater collection, and mentions the Johnston Lake Regional Detention Basin. However, on the big prints sheet C.300, I don't see that all of the storm drainage is connected. It looks like the west half would go to Johnston Lake, but it looked to me like the east half probably was draining over towards Sunset. And my question really is, so where does that water end up?
So yeah, on Sunset, we have a current that exists on that westerly side of the neck and then goes north. And I'm assuming Sunset continues northerly, I guess, if that storm sewer system will continue. There's the existing storm sewer system on Sunset is short, back on that easterly side.
Okay, and I guess, so you may not know this because Sunset's out of your purview, but I'm kind of remembering that the no, what am I trying to call them, box culverts on Sunset, it seemed like dumped into, at least some of them toward the north, dumped into the big detention pond there on the north side of Compass property, and then that in turn dumps out and flows to the north through Madison Valley, Madison Creek. And I guess ultimately my concern is whether this is putting an additional load on that was not anticipated. So,
I believe that you're right, that it does drain back towards the south, or it doesn't make Johnson Lake, but from what I know anyway, there's no reason that there wouldn't be capacity. It's not a huge site. I mean, it would be just a few acres of land. I think it'd be just fine.
okay. So just to make sure I've got it clear, and thank you, Mr. Slish, so the east side storm sewers in Sunset Villas would go to Sunset, and then whatever system is handling stormwater drainage from Sunset. Is that?
Yeah, about the
Yeah.
east third of our
Yeah.
project drains easterly next to that Sunset storm sewer system.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Mr. Salisbury.
Any additional questions or comments for either staff or the applicant? Yes, Mr. Akia.
I have a curiosity question more so than a question that has pertinent to the zoning of it. But with this project, how many, call it senior living units, would we have in Raymore currently, and then with the addition of these 98? And is that something that we consider or look at from a development standpoint?
Yes. To answer your question, when you look at Foxwood Springs and Benton House are both kind of anomalies because they're more intensive care than what is being proposed here. Outside of that, you would have Morning View, which is a age-restricted community. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I can provide those to you. We do track those. I just didn't bring those with me. You also have then Alexander Creek. There's a portion of that subdivision that's age-restricted. The Meadows of the Good Ranch is also a phase of detached single-family that's age-restricted. The commission recently approved the Ridgeview Estates project, which was 60 additional units of 55 and older age-restricted units. And I believe that covers all of what is existing, Walnut Estates, also in Original Town, is another existing development. So over that, and I'm happy to provide the numbers of that after tonight. I can get those to you if you're interested. We do see the demand. Staff often does get calls about this type of use, which is why this project was of interest to staff.
Oh, yeah, no, I assume there's a huge demand for it right now, as that group is the largest group currently as far as, ages go in our country. But I also know that over time, that's going to also adjust as well. But I was just curious if we track that. That's all I was kind of looking for.
What was interesting with this project necessarily is some of the other projects that I just mentioned are not by deed of the property age restricted. It's more of the covenants of the HOA and what they enforce. The Meadows is an example where initially that was not 55 and older, and then the neighborhood kind of evolved into that, so then that's what it became. This property, though, is part of the zoning, as Mr. Eppert mentioned originally. The property is currently deed restricted that it has to be 55 and older, which was a supporting element of staff's review as well.
Sure, no, and I don't have any objection to the project. That was just, like I said, it was a curiosity question, if that was something that we tracked and monitored. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item. Don't anybody jump at once?
Sure, I'll go.
Thank you.
I'd like to move, hang on, let me get there. I'd like to make a motion that that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the staff proposed findings of fact and approve case number 23013 Sunset Villas site plan, subject to the 11 conditions outlined in our packet.
It's 11.
I'll second it.
Got a motion by Commissioner Kia, second by Vice Chair Pfizer for the Planning and Zone, for a motion for the Planning and Zoning Commission to accept the staff proposed finding of fact and approve case 23013 Sunset Villas site plan, subject to the 11 conditions outlined. Any discussion of the item? If not, all in favor? Seeing all hands raised, that will pass unanimously, 9-0. Thank you. That will conclude our new business for this evening, which will take us to item 8 in our packet, the City Council report.
Thank you, Chairman. Jonathan Zer, happy to provide the City Council report. There have been a number of meetings that the City Council has held since your last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. First was on March 27th, 2023. During the course of that meeting, the City Council did review and unanimously approve the Oak Ridge Farms fourth plat, lots 61 to 84, and the replat of lot 58. So that was one that came before you all back on March 7th and was approved unanimously by the Planning and Zoning Commission at that particular time. And again, a replat of lot 58 of the existing Oaks Ridge Farms fourth plat. Basically, they were looking to subdivide it into multiple lots, each containing individual residential buildings. Each proposed request was for the R3A zoning district. That would have been the only item from the March 27th City Council. Thereafter, on April 10th, the City Council held its regular meeting whereat it declared the April 4th, 2023 election results. During the course of that declaration, our former Commissioner Ingert became Councilmember Ingert. So congratulations to him and wish him the best of luck as he serves as City Council member. It's a pleasure to have Commissioner Smith joining us. Shortly after concluding the initial regular meeting of the City Council on April 10th, the City Council entered into a special session, special meeting whereat it approved during its consent agenda the appointment of Eric Smith to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So again, welcome. Items of interest for the council, that would really have been the only item on that particular meeting of interest for the commission this evening. Last, I have April 24th, 2023. During the course of that meeting, a couple of items of interest for the commission. The first, City Council did choose a mayor pro tem. That mayor pro tem has been identified as Councilmember Abdelgawad. The council also approved the governing body members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, wherein Mayor Turnbow agreed to serve and continue to serve in his role on the Planning and Zoning. No other council members, though they could have made the request to also serve. Finally, under that April 24th City Council meeting, the Timber Trails mixed-use PUD rezoning and preliminary plan, there was a public hearing on that, which took place for 22.31 acres. Griffin Riley Property Group making their presentation for further consideration. That was approved by the City Council unanimously. That would conclude my City Council report. Obviously, I'm happy to have Mayor Turnbow join in with any additional comments that he thinks I might have missed, as well as Mr. Gress.
Got a thumbs up from the mayor. Perfect. So I will then turn it over to Mr. Eppert and Mr. Gress for staff report.
Thank you. Just 2 items for me tonight. So obviously the next meeting will be on the 16th of this month. We have 2 applications, both for final plats. You'll see Madison Valley, the second phase come in front of you, and then finally a connection from the outer road to Dean being Johnston Drive. So those would be the 2 applications, and then Mr. Zer stole our thunder a little bit, but wanted to obviously congratulate Mr. Smith on his appointment, and we look forward to having him on the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Anything from?
I actually do have something to add this time. Pavement and curb will be going down on 163rd and Sunset here in the next couple weeks, so hopefully we can get that hillside paved up.
So is that basically from the edge of like those Creekmore villas all the way to the Sunset, just on that east-west portion?
Yeah, so Sunset goes up the hill, and it'll be to the north property line of the park for Sunset, and then 163rd to the top of the hill. So.
Wow, fantastic. Any commission members have any questions for any members of staff? Awesome. It'll take us to item 10, public comment. As always, if anybody happens to be hanging around, you are welcome to come speak. Seeing none, that'll take us into our commission member comments. I'll start all the way at my far right. Commissioner Bowie.
Welcome aboard. All right, glad to have you. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. And with that, that's it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. I'll just kind of work down the row, I guess. Commissioner Manser.
All right, thank you to staff. It's good to see you all again. Welcome, Eric, to the commission, and hopefully you'll be a great addition. It's a good group. Thanks.
Secretary Peterman.
I don't have anything tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Faulkner.
First, welcome to Commissioner Smith, and thank you to staff. That's all.
Vice Chair Pfizer.
Also, welcome. It's nice to have a new neighbor. I recently attended the planning convention, and so I took a few notes. Thought I'd bring up a few things that I saw. Sorry, not being loud. First, when you get on a plane, if a repairman comes and tells you you have to get up because he has to repair your window, get a little concerned, especially when he pulls out his duct tape. We've
In the
survived.
aviation industry, they call that speed tape.
Maybe so, but I said, are you really going to just tape the window? And he's like, how would you fix it? And I said, I'd get a different plane. But he didn't like that answer. And anyway, it was the only time I think I flew somewhere where I was kind of questioning whether I'd get there. But I did, and got back home, so that was good. But just a little interesting story to start the trip. But I went to several seminars, and kind of here's some sort of the high points. One was about arts in planning, and it was kind of about incorporating an arts district into a master plan. And my first thought was, well, we're too small to have an arts district. And then I thought, well, why not? We can do something like that. So it's just kind of something to think about, ways to incorporate the arts into planning. So that was pretty interesting. There was another one about historical preservation in Kansas City, and it's always kind of fun to go to kind of one of the local presenters there, because you kind of find out things about the city that you didn't know were going on, and it was pretty interesting. It kind of focused on a lot of African American history and restoring the Satchel Paige House, which sounded like a great project. Then I went to a seminar called Can ADUs Save the World? And the answer was no. It was interesting because when I've gone to a previous conference, it was ADUs are the answer to the housing crisis and affordable housing. But the problem is that they're not being built where people need the more affordable housing. The people that can afford to add an ADU to their property aren't in the areas where the people that need to rent it are. So it's about 20% are actually rented out to people, and the rest are usually for aging parents to live in, or your kids come back home, or that kind of thing. So that was kind of interesting. Let's see. And then we had a happy hour with a gentleman from Urban Outfitters, and he was talking about the idea of building housing for employees. And my husband and I had quite the conversation about this afterwards, like why it was good and why it was bad. And it was really interesting. And then this morning, as I was driving to work, I heard a story on the radio about this very thing, about a company in Indiana where they actually built houses, and then they sold them to employees at a pretty good rate. And they had a builder that just kind of built at cost. And it wasn't like, if you decided to leave the company, you didn't have to go away. You owned the house. And so it was really kind of interesting. I thought, well, that sounds like it's working great. So just something that I don't know if this is something a lot of companies are thinking of, but it was interesting. And I was really excited to go to Philadelphia to go to all the Rocky locations. I was going to wear my Balboa Boxing Club shirt, but it was in the laundry, so I didn't get to. Sadly, this man on the orientation tour with me had to hear about every single Rocky site that we saw. He hadn't seen the movies, so now he has heard about every single one of them. But it was really fascinating, and I ran up the steps, kind of like if you see the very first movie, how he runs up the steps and has to stop and breathe. It was like that. But I made it to the top, and did the whole thing, and we have lots of pictures. And so next year, the conference is in Minneapolis, and I really, really encourage people to go because, if you don't, I'll go again because I love to go. But I really do think you get a lot out of it, and it's interesting to learn about a new city and learn what's going on. So think about it now. It's next year in Minneapolis. It'll be a little cold, but it'll be worth it. You will be glad that you have gone. So that's my synopsis of the trip.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad you made it to the steps. I wrote down on my piece of paper, steps, ? And then you made mention that you made it, so I appreciate that. Commissioner Smith, first time. Would you like to make any comments tonight, sir?
I just want to say hello. I appreciate the opportunity. Mr. Eppert and Mr. Gress did a wonderful job of getting me up to speed on what the commission does, what's going on in the city, and I look forward to seeing what I can contribute to the team.
Welcome aboard. Commissioner Kia.
Just like to welcome you, my new sidekick over here. They don't seem to last very long, but as Mayor said, that's because they keep going to City Council, so no pressure, but when you're ready, let us know. And then just want to let you know on the Arts District piece, Independence is actually in the process of approving an Arts District within their city limits in cooperation with Inglewood Arts, which is a nonprofit that purchased a building and rehabbed it. It's turned into a phenomenal space. So, in those notes, if you want to see what Independence is doing, I highly recommend visiting Inglewood Arts and checking that out. Ironically enough, within that arts district, they also are talking about accessory dwelling units on properties and allowing for what they're calling like micro villages on plots of land, so making small homes that are more affordable, especially for artists who, maybe just be single or smaller families to be able to afford living. I happen to be a part of Inglewood Arts' Affordable Housing Committee, which is why I'm a little bit privy to that information. Kind of found it interesting that you brought that up. So it is definitely something cool that they're doing in an area that I think otherwise was neglected for quite some time. And yeah, very supportive of that type of concept and idea. And thank you, city staff, for everything that you do. I would like to know the numbers, though, so I appreciate you looking into that for me.
Mayor Turnbow, sir.
I had a lot to say tonight, but I need to go home and mow my lawn. No, I did want to give you an update about the landfill. So as you know, the legislature only works through next Friday when the session ends, May the 12th. And so we're down to a final calendar item. And actually the House bill is still alive. It's working through the Senate. I think it will get its day in court down there. We feel pretty good about it. And there's a lot of people working on it down there. There's several working against it, but there are a lot of good people working on it down there that we feel like are making headway and keeping it in the forefront. All the senators, Senator Serpoy and Razor, working hard, as is Senator Bratton, who continues to keep it in the forefront of everybody's mind and working it forward. So we're pleased of the progress, but right now, we're kind of chewing our fingernails to see when it's going to get actually onto the floor from the calendar. That's up to the President Pro Tem and the floor leader. Actually, the floor leader will restrict the time period. We've told that it should get 3 hours of debate. If we get those 3 hours, I'll be very happy, because I think we've got a groundswell of support from within the Senate to get it over the finish line. So we'll know pretty soon about the success, whether or not it's going to make it through the Senate or not, and then hopefully get through to the governor's desk for signature. But the staff continues to work very hard. City Attorney and I, Mr. Zur, work with the core team here to strategize moving forward on this. We have several other irons in the fire, so to speak, that should allow us to continue hopefully to kill the fill over the next several months. And even if the Senate does get the bill through, and it goes to the governor's desk, we will continue to work on some of these other alternative issues that we feel will be effective in killing the fill for that particular location. I think you may have heard even the mayor's own comments the other night on his fireside chat or whatever it was he was calling it on a Facebook, and he was taking questions, quite a few questions about the landfill, and answered that he felt like that the highest and best use of that property would be for development of residential and or commercial. So he felt like that even that piece of property was not that a landfill was not an appropriate use for that property. So we'll run a holding to that as we move forward. And but hopefully the Senate will come through for us, and we'll be able to eliminate that piece of property for further consideration as a landfill. So keep your fingers crossed on that. And Eric, welcome aboard. It's good to see you again. Eric and I now serve on 2 boards together. So I'm glad to have him here. That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, staff, as always, for everything you do. Welcome, Commissioner Smith. And then only other little thing I had is you mentioned the Satchel Paige House, and that reminded me today, for anybody that has been down to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum today, they announced a $25 million expansion to the museum. So that's going to be great to see just from a city perspective and everything that's going on down there. So that made me think of that, so I thought I would mention. Other than that, I don't have anything else to add. Just wish everybody a great, wonderful week and start of May, and before you know it, it'll be summer and hot and all that jazz. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconds.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Faulkner, second by Commissioner Manser to adjourn. Any discussion? Didn't think so. All in favor? 9-0. We are adjourned. Thank you.